dimensions of time and space. Technology beyond comprehension. They are watching. They are waiting. They are already here.
I know what I saw is not from this earth. It is just amazing.
Deep in the heart of Texas, the small town of Stephenville is surrounded by wide open prairie, longhorn cattle, and big skies. On January 8th, 2008, local resident Steve Allen gets together with friends Mike Odom and Lance Jones to enjoy a clear, mild night.
It had been a very harsh, cold winter. And I talked to my friend Mike on the phone earlier, and he says, come on over and we'll build a little campfire outside and sit out and enjoy the sky. And being a pilot, I look up at the skies quite a bit.
Now that's strange. What the hell? Steve?
I was the one to first see it.
Now check that out.
I look towards the east and I see some lights coming at us at a very high rate of speed. Some very bright, intense lights. It looked like a magnesium flare. It's unlike anything that I had ever seen.
What in the hell?
Nobody wanted to say anything because we was at kind of awestruck on it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Being a pilot, first thing I thought of is what kind of airplane was it? I fly that area quite a bit and I'm familiar with how long it takes to get from point A to B. I estimated the speed to be in the several thousand miles an hour area. How something could move that fast and not even produce air noise going across the surface. No sound whatsoever.
The lights come to a near-dead stop over Stephenville.
I didn't know if it was a war of the worlds or what. And then the 7 lights reconfigured to a vertical shape. The light configuration in the rear was different. It had 7 lights in the rear, blinking at no particular time. They sat there for a moment or two, and then all of a sudden they burst into a flame.
You see anything like that?
I've never seen anything like that before in my life.
The flame looked like it was like a white, kind of a dirty oxygen flame, and then it just simply disappeared. It didn't streak off or anything, it just disappeared.
What the hell?
I had never witnessed anything like this. Lance Jones jumped in his car and took off. He was alarmed and scared. He didn't say goodbye, see you later, it's been real or anything. He just got the heck out of Dodge. Mike and I looked at each other and we said, what in the world happened? It just made no sense to me. We had to tell somebody. So we went into his house to tell his wife, Claudette, about what had happened.
Claudette?
Hey guys, you're back early.
These lights came up there. We were at the camp.
We saw them above the tree line. They took off.
Claudette's reaction at first was disbelief, and that's when she says, oh, you guys, I'm going to call Lance. And we invited her, go ahead and call Lance, you know, to verify our story. Why Lance has more credibility than Mike and I do, I don't know. before anything was said, I think Lance told Claudette, hurry up and run back outside, it's coming again.
All right. This better be good.
It came by closer than the original time and lower as well. This thing was up close and personal. It wasn't something streaking out across the universe. It was close to us. And then all of a sudden, 2 F-16s came by. Full afterburner, had the flames hanging out the back of the jets in pursuit of it. We live in the close proximity of 3 different Air Force bases. We never get any F-16s in the area at that altitude, much less in pursuit of another aircraft. It seemed like it was kind of keeping them at bay, like it could control its speed far greater than they could. We watched it go off into the east until it just went out of sight. I had never witnessed anything like this, not in the remote possibility of anything like this. Why would our military be chasing something of our own product? Obviously they wouldn't. So questions was what's it doing here? Why is it here and what do they want? Is it of danger to us? I had many questions that I needed answers for. I told Mike and Claudette when I left that night we're going to get to the bottom of it, but I had an urgency to go home. My first feelings was if it's the end of times, I'd like to be at home and protect my house and my wife and be with loved ones. I was still trying to process all we had seen and get it straight in my mind.
Hon? What's going on? What's up?
Me and the guys tonight, we saw some pretty strange lights in the sky. They were doing things I'd never seen anything do. A couple of jets went after them, but they couldn't catch them.
My wife could see that I was visibly shaken and knew I had actually seen something.
UFO?
I don't know.
She begged and pleaded with me to not tell anybody about it.
Honey, look, you can't go around talking about UFOs, okay?
What we saw was real, and I'm gonna find out exactly what it was.
Well...
She didn't want me to speak about it because she'd think people would think we was crazy. Of course, being a typical male, you gotta talk about it, you know, and do exactly what your wife tells you not to do. If I saw it by myself, I might have not said anything, but since there was 3 of us, I thought, well, I've got to talk about it, with the hopes that other people had seen it. I got probably 30 minutes of sleep that night. I didn't sleep very much at all, trying to figure out what had happened to us. My first phone call the next morning was to the airport here in Stephenville, Texas. I'm a pilot, and those guys at the airport, they know who I am. They know I may be a lot of things, but I'm not a liar and don't make things up. So they took interest to what I might have seen. They called Fort Worth Tower, where the radar is actually located at, to see if there was anything unusual in the area. They did try to find out and get me some answers, but they found none. That seems terribly strange to me. My next phone call was to the newspaper to see if they had anybody that might have witnessed it or reported it. When I told the reporter what I saw, she had not heard or seen anything of what we had seen. She found some credibility to my story, and that's when she decided she would take it and run with it. A lot of people saw what we saw. But quite a few people here don't like the limelight or be out in public. Didn't want their names mentioned. Several of them I persuaded to go ahead and come. forward, you know, since, you know, hey, I'm here by myself, you guys help me out. And sure enough, one came to my aid, thank goodness.
On the evening of January 8th, 2008, on the outskirts of Stephenville, Texas, Steve Allen and a group of friends observed military jets chasing a bizarre configuration of lights. But were they the only witnesses to this strange event?
I called a newspaper here in town and I talked to the editor, and I told her the story, and she asked me if they could print an article, and I said, make sure you put my phone number in here just in case somebody else might have saw it, they can call me. I probably talked to at least 60 people the first day. I got all their names, their addresses, what they saw, when they saw it, tried to get as many details as I could. Also, I asked them, would you be willing to come forward?
Most are reluctant to go public, but local county constable Leroy Gayton steps up.
I've been in law enforcement for going on 20 years now. I am a constable, and I'm elected by the people. I have a lot of credibility online here.
Say, Mom enjoyed her birthday?
Yeah, her face was huge on that one.
It was my wife's birthday.
How was dinner?
I had bought a cake. We'd cooked for my wife.
Dad, what's that?
It was then when my boy pointed up to the sky, and he said, Dad, he said, look at those lights. I got a pair of binoculars and trying to get a better look of what it was that we were seeing. And I couldn't make anything out other than these bright, bluish, fluorescent-looking lights. During this whole time, I'm trying to watch them, and my boy's, you know, he's a 10-year-old, he's asking me questions. Dad, is that a flying saucer? What is that, Dad? You know, what are they doing? I know they're jets because I see them at the house all the time. I hear them.
What was that?
I just thought to myself, is it a part of an experiment? What is this? I mean, everything's happening so quickly, and I'm thinking to myself, 9 million things. Is it something out of this world? Is it military?
The local newspaper follows up on the story and contacts the Air Force.
They reported that they did not have any aircraft in the area and nothing was going on. I found it quite alarming. You know, I know what an F-16 looks like.
They flat out denied that they had military planes that night. And I knew for a fact that there was at least 2 that night because I saw them.
That obviously sends up a red flag to me. What are they trying to hide? I was in a quest for the truth. Whatever it took, whether it was to make a commotion with the media or the public or whatever, we was willing to do it.
Steve contacts the Mutual UFO Network, one of the oldest and largest UFO investigative organizations in the United States. MUFON sends Director of Research Robert Powell to Stephenville to investigate the case.
The first thing we tried to do is determine, was this an airplane? Was this someone with his running lights on? Was this a star? Which has nothing to do with whether we're talking about little green men or little gray guys. We're talking about an event, an unidentified flying object that no one knows what it is, but as a scientist, you must investigate it.
Within days, the investigation turns up 17 witnesses to corroborate Steve Allen's story.
Elected officials, other businessmen, law enforcement officers, a lot of different witnesses.
What really made Stephenville such a unique UFO event was that not only did you have 17 witnesses, you had witnesses who saw at different times over a 3.5-hour period and over varied locations. So this wasn't a case of one single instance. That was extraordinary.
Then, another credible witness comes forward to challenge the military's claim that nothing unusual was flying in the Stephenville skies on the night of January 8th, 2008. The U.S. military denies dispatching F-16s over Stephenville, Texas on the night of January 8th, 2008. But Constable Leroy Gayton and local pilot Steve Allen witnessed fighter jets chasing an unknown object, and they're not alone.
We had 17 witnesses who came to tell us about what happened.
Quite a few people did come forward as unlike anything this town or this area had ever seen.
And one reliable witness account stands above the rest.
The night of January the 8th, one of my officers was in the downtown area near the Erath County Courthouse here in Stephenville. And he said to me that he saw a large object. To quote him, he thought it was an airplane that was going to crash. He said he could see the outline, the silhouette, and then he saw some lights. It didn't take long to know it wasn't an airplane because he said it was horizontal and then it stood up vertically close to the courthouse and it slowly moved towards the east sky. He pointed his radar in that direction. It wasn't very fast. It was less than 20 miles an hour.
From my experience of flying, I keep up with the latest technology in the aircraft industry, what their capabilities are. Of course, the government has the best of everything, and it's pretty well known what's produced and what they have. They may have a secret. I don't think they have one of these, though.
Aerospace engineer Dr. Wallace Fowler studies spacecraft design and flight testing.
I have in the past held security clearances, and I'm not about to say things that I shouldn't be saying about things that I knew about back then. But I am sure that there are things out there that the military is doing that they're not telling us about. The SR-71, for example, was an unknown thing for years. The F-117 was unknown for years. Well, there were these strange sightings of this strange airplane out in the Nevada desert. You know, probably somebody thought that was an alien spaceship, the way that thing looked.
I knew it was some events that we'd never witnessed before. You didn't have to be a pilot. A first grader could have told you what they saw with good accuracy.
Dozens of people in a North Texas town claim to have seen a UFO, and now it's getting worldwide attention.
More and more witnesses continue to go public.
We're approaching 100 people probably that have, seen something in regard to this UFO.
Many credible witnesses and sightings, they all reporting it in the same area.
The multiple reports set off a media frenzy.
Numerous people witnessed what they say were mysterious lights in the sky in the Erath County town of Stephenville.
And under the glare of the media, the military releases some new information.
The military finally released a report saying that they did in fact have 10 F-16s in the area.
And I found that to be quite disturbing. I just kind of felt betrayed. Why did they wait so long to come out?
Obviously, they was trying to hide something or cover something up.
If it's something that they're working for national defense, certainly they don't need to tell me, or anyone else.
All they would have to do is say, it's one of ours, goodbye, end of the story.
But the official response to UFO evidence has been consistent across the U.S. government for decades. Investigative journalist Leslie Kane has spent the last 10 years documenting UFO sightings around the world.
In the early 1950s, the Air Force set up a program called Project Blue Book. And the purpose of that program was to receive reports on UFO sightings from the public. Project Blue Book was very good at ridiculing people, or at least of issuing explanations for cases that were were ludicrous. They were basically a public relations operation for the Air Force to minimize the mysterious aspect of UFOs.
The military shut down Project Blue Book in 1970. In the case of Stephenville, the Air Force claims witnesses were tricked by an optical illusion.
They said it was a reflection off of a high-altitude jet airliner. Very well could have been a reflection off of my shiny white ass is what it might have been.
Another military explanation is lenticular clouds, stationary lens-shaped clouds that form at high altitude.
These don't travel with two F-16s chasing them, so that was just totally absurd.
MUFON investigator Robert Powell presses the Air Force for answers. No longer denying the presence of the F-16s, what else does the military know?
My first reaction was, I need to get radar information. So I sent Freedom of Information requests to every military base within 70 miles of Stephenville. In every case with the military, the response was, we have no information responsive to your request. Now, what does that mean? It's not even a yes or a no. My immediate thought was, I wonder, can I get radar information from the FAA and try to verify what these witnesses have seen?
The civilian Federal Aviation Administration releases full radar reports for the night of January 8th, 2008 from an airport near Stephenville.
I don't think they knew that what they was giving it for, so I think we snuck in and got it without them knowing what we was doing.
The radar data is a play-by-play of the activity in the sky on the night of the mass sighting.
This is a great chance to see if I can corroborate what these witnesses saw.
A person might lie to you, but the radar data won't.
Powell begins by identifying the obvious.
You could see commercial craft on the radar returns. Most of them were at high altitude. They were either descending or ascending out of the DFW Fort Worth airspace.
Next, the data confirms the military's recent admission.
The radar data did in fact show that there was 10 F-16s in the area.
Then, the radar reveals something more.
During the time period of 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., we picked up a total of 3 unusual objects that moved through the Stephenville area without transponders.
Powell knows the U.S. government requires all aircraft to use transponders.
The transponder is very similar to a GPS system, and it's basically just a radio signal going back to the radar station. And all 3 of those objects did not have a transponder, and all 3 were objects in the same area as the witnesses.
And then, the data uncovers a possible target.
Commander, I think you should look at this.
We have an unidentified aircraft approaching prohibited area P-49er, Crawford, Texas.
One craft without a transponder was headed straight into one of North America's most heavily guarded no-fly zones.
One of the items that we saw on the radar was traveling directly towards Crawford Range. It was traveling in a straight line. We had over 140 radar hits on that object. Crawford Ranch is referred to as the Western White House.
Home of the President of the United States, George W. Bush. the same night, witnesses report seeing a UFO fly over Stephenville, Texas. Radar data reveals 10 F-16 fighter jets and a mysterious craft bearing down on the no-fly zone over Crawford Ranch.
Crawford Ranch is where George W. Bush, our ex-president, lives. It's east of here, about 60 miles.
There's a no-fly zone of 3 miles in every direction around it, even if the president is not there. To break that no-fly zone is a serious offense.
This would be the ultimate national security compromise. If a pilot flies through that area, they'll either force you down or they'll shoot you down.
This object that's moving towards the western White House, and we have F-16s within 30, 35 miles of where this unknown object is, but on radar you can see that none of the F-16s react. And as this object descends, suddenly it just moves perpendicular at a high rate of speed, and in 1 to 2 seconds it's gone.
If the F-16s weren't chasing the strange object, was the Air Force escorting one of its own top-secret aircraft?
Densely populated area. Why would they have it out? It could be in the desert where it wouldn't be seen, you know. Why have it in this area?
If this was a military aircraft and they'd flown it over civilian space, that would be a huge military blunder.
Hoping to learn more about this strange object, Steve Allen and Robert Powell returned to the radar evidence.
To me, the speed was a very critical thing.
Radar sweeps every 10 seconds. So once I know where this object is here, where it's at 10 seconds later, it's just a question of doing some quick math to calculate how far did it move over the course of 10 to 20 seconds. What I concluded was the object accelerated to close to 1,900 miles per hour and continued on its way.
Next, Powell works to determine the object's size.
I wasn't able to do it with the radar information because what the FAA collects does not tell you anything about size. But there was one witness who claimed to have some evidence that we could utilize.
After my story went public, I had another officer that works with us that I've known all my life. And he told me that the night of January the 8th, he saw, I guess, what you'd say, a craft. He said it was floating near the ground. He said it was very long, very thin, and it had a hub, a bubble. He said it was very large.
He described an object, almost a city block in size.
He said it was something that was very big. It was something that was doing very strange things and was traveling at a high rate of speed. And I trust him with my life. He has no reason to lie.
I tried to analyze the size of this craft through multiple witnesses. And I would take the witness's visual description, and then I would look at where the object was based on the radar information. And based on that, I could estimate a size of the object using trigonometry. The minimum size of this object was at least 1/8 of a mile to 1/4 of a mile in size.
Think about something the size, with a radius of 2 football fields. You take a football field on one end and spin it around one goalpost, and then you've got something about that size.
The question is, are there man-made aircraft with such amazing characteristics?
The SR-71 flew 2,100 miles an hour. So the SR-71 is totally capable of reaching that kind of speeds. The X-15 flew 6,000 miles an hour. The space shuttle flew 17,500 miles an hour or faster. So there are vehicles that we have built that can fly a lot faster than that. But in order to do what has been reported, a vehicle would have to have, number one, a lot of power. Thrust is the huge thing. You'd have to be able to have a lot of thrust for a vehicle that's 600 feet long or wide to go 1,900 miles an hour.
Also, The total silence is what was very intriguing. How something could move that fast and not even produce air noise going across the surface. It was just totally silent where we was at.
When a vehicle gets up to the speed of sound, Mach 1, what happens is a shock wave forms at the bow of the vehicle, and this shock wave is perceived by us humans as a sonic boom. Anything traveling at faster than the speed of sound, especially at a low level, you would hear it. Someone would have heard the sonic booms. But the vehicle itself is reported to be totally silent.
Professor of Physics and Astronomy John Willis studies the vast distances of outer space.
If you had this imaginary spaceship that could travel close to the speed of light, it would take you 4 years to get to the nearest stars. If you were traveling at the much lower speeds that we can achieve with rockets on Earth, you would be looking at many thousands of years. It's possible, but it would take many times longer than a single human generation. As a human race, we haven't yet thought about the challenge of taking that amount of time to transport humans across that kind of distance. We can make some guesses about how many planets might host life. But to actually predict when will we make contact with an alien civilization, most scientists aren't willing to make that speculation.
I feel like whatever we saw is not from this Earth due to the fact of its flight capability, is the speed it was traveling, it being able to fly silently. The unknown is very intriguing and leaves a lot of questions. I checked the internet, and a newspaper article shows that in like 1890 or 1891, in fact, there had been some sightings previously. There was a gentleman near the cotton compress over there that had witnessed a flying object of some sort. And it burst into flames, and he could describe it as a bale of cotton on fire. Now, I've seen cotton burn, and it's the same color of what I did witness, so his description was just dead on as far as the color of the flame. What it tells me is there has been multiple sightings around here. That's not the only sighting, so whatever it is, I feel like it comes and goes from this area.
2 weeks after the sighting, Constable Leroy Gayton routinely patrols the streets of Stephenville.
Something caught my attention up in the sky.
The witness count continues to rise, and over 100 people report seeing an unidentified flying object in the Stephenville skies on January 8th, 2008. FAA radar confirms the presence of 10 F-16 jets and a massive object in the area that night. But the military denies any knowledge of the mysterious craft. Then, 2 weeks after the mass sighting, Constable Leroy Gayton responds to a suspicious call in downtown Stephenville.
It was late, probably 3 o'clock in the morning, when over the radio I hear an alarm call come in. There was a business where an alarm was going off after hours. And being that I was close by, I thought, hey, I'll just stop and wait for the backup to come. and we'll check out the building. Something caught my attention up in the sky. It was changing colors from red, blue, possibly green.
This time, Gayton goes after hard evidence of the UFO.
These cameras are not made for pointing up in the sky. They're made at pointing at cars, license plates. I was able to focus on this object and started recording. I could see it on a monitor in my car. And it was a large orb that seemed to be floating, not like your typical star, much larger. It was moving from east to west slowly. And I just didn't know what it was. It looked to be somewhat pulsating. It appeared to be almost hollow. But I sat there and I videotaped it for 15, 20 minutes. The lights didn't leave a tail because they took off so fast. I went home and looked at the video, and what was really strange, it had a lot of static interference. But for some strange reason, it just wasn't a clear video.
That did also make front page headlines in the area.
In spite of the hazy image, the latest sighting brings a new sense of purpose to the investigation.
We was making progress. Everybody knew what they saw. During the time, everybody had their own assignment. Robert was doing his radar analysis. I was still taking a lot of testimony, a lot of what people saw, so we was busy just trying to figure out what happened. But the military simply tried to explain it away. They've got a smear campaign or a cover-up campaign to discredit whatever was seen.
The UFO phenomenon is something that the U.S. government cannot explain. I believe they know it exists, but they can't explain it, and it's a monkey they don't want on their back.
We were just almost ridiculed to death about what happened. They never asked what we saw. They was just too busy trying to explain it away.
The question of a UFO cover-up by the U.S. government is a very tricky and difficult question to deal with. If there's an event that happens that's widely reported and there are numerous witnesses and we're very clear about what happened, the U.S. government will not want to be involved. It's almost like they want to hide something that everybody knows happened. There are probably classified documents still being withheld that deal with the UFO subject. So the bottom line is the U.S. government does not reveal everything it knows.
But Steve Allen refuses to give up his quest for the truth. His perseverance pays off when he receives a startling phone call. The person on the other end of the line is none other than NASA astronaut Edgar Dean Mitchell.
We talked for quite some time, probably an hour, hour and a half on the phone. I told him what all I had seen. He actually knew what I was talking about.
Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell is an American hero. He was the 6th man to walk on the moon. And for many years, he has been very outspoken about the UFO subject. He's interested in it, has done internal investigations, private investigations with people at high levels.
He had quite a few interesting stories to tell me about what NASA wants them to say and what they don't want them to say. He relayed some facts about Buzz Aldrin being the first people on the moon, that something had landed within a mile of Buzz. He told Houston about it. Houston instructed them, said, don't look at it, don't look that way, have no contact with it, carry on with your mission. Disregard whatever was over there.
And what about Mitchell's own Apollo mission in 1971?
He has seen craft while he was out in space. He saw different things that definitely wasn't stars or anything. He saw a UFO. Dr. Mitchell is very credible. NASA doesn't control him anymore, or the government, so he really doesn't give a darn. He'll just tell you what he saw, I feel like whatever he says is the truth. I knew what my story was. That was the most important thing. The big surprise was later on is when the report came out and what it contained. The radar data did in fact show something unlike anything that I had ever seen. Total surprise, a shock actually.
Since Steve Allen first reported seeing a UFO over Stephenville, Texas on the night of January 8th, 2008, more than 100 witnesses come forward to corroborate his account. But the question remains, what was in the sky that night? After months of compiling eyewitness testimony and analyzing radar returns, both the data and the witness accounts reveal a crucial anomaly.
The speed was a very critical thing. Very important that something this large can fly at that speed and come to a stop, go back the other way, and over-accelerate two F-16s. Very unusual.
The object, whatever it was, went from basically standing still to 1,900 miles an hour in about 2 seconds.
Anything that could fly that fast and then come to a complete stop that quick over such a short area, you know, that's a lot of G-force.
The concept of G-force is part of Newton's law of gravity, a law that, here on Earth at least, can't be broken.
G-force is basically an acceleration phenomenon. If you're in an airplane that pulls, quote, 2 Gs, at that point, the force on your bottom pushing up on you is twice your weight. If it's 3 Gs, it's 3 times your weight. In an F-16, for example, they can stand 9 Gs fairly easily. They're usually blackout at 10 Gs. Blood comes out of your head, and you're no longer in control of the aircraft. I don't know of anything that's 600 feet across that can hover, that can go 1,900 miles an hour in 2 seconds and then stop again. I know of nothing that we know of that can do that. If you do the calculations, roughly that's about 43 Gs. Within seconds, you'd kill any human being.
What I finally concluded when we completed the Stephenville report was that whatever caused this was not caused by the U.S. Air Force. It doesn't mean that that was an extraterrestrial object. No one can prove what happened in Stephenville was an extraterrestrial object. However, what I can say is that it was not anything that we manufactured on Earth.
When the report came out, I felt good about it. It did tell exactly what we saw, you know. Exact location, exact times, everything was there.
And I knew that I had seen something strange, but because of some people just maybe not believing, I somewhat felt vindicated because the evidence was there.
We ran our analysis by 3 different FAA air traffic controllers. We asked them, please look at this, can you find an error in the report? And none of those 3 could find an error in our report.
As it turns out, Powell's report may have been too good. Taking a cue from the U.S. military, the FAA tightens their policy surrounding access to radar data information.
After our Stephenville report, the next time I requested radar information from the FAA using the Freedom of Information Act request, they refused to give me the same type of radar information, stating that they felt that it was a threat to the national airspace for me to have that information.
They may have accidentally sent us all that data and we compiled it, and sure enough, there it was. It substantiated what we saw. I don't think they want to make that mistake again.
For its part, the military continues to deny that any unknown object ever passed through Stephenville airspace. 2008, more than 9 months after the first UFO sighting, a crowd of Friday night football fans pack the stands of the local area high school.
They was having a football game, and whatever it was, the UFO or the craft pulled up over the stadium.
Green, 72.
The craft came directly overhead, completely stopped the football game. players stopped first, and the refs was busy reffing the game. And then they watched the players all looking up. Everybody in the stands saw it. The football players saw it. The referees saw it.
Hundreds, if not 1,000 of people seeing the same thing. This is a real situation. It's not some kind of hallucination.
Say, Mom enjoyed her birthday?
Yeah, her face was huge on that one.
Since January the 8th and these other events, my life has changed. My beliefs have changed. Now I'm open to the possibility that there is life beyond our Earth, and I hope that before I leave this great Earth that I have an answer of what it was that I saw.
I knew it was a life-altering experience. I knew it was something that not many people had the pleasure of witnessing, that I was blessed being able to see it. I believe in life in other universes or galaxies or solar systems. You'd have to be very narrow-minded to think that we're the only people out there.
Steve Allen's quest for the truth isn't over.
I sincerely hope I get to see it again. I want to know what it is. I look up at the skies quite a bit now.